I was on Redcliffe Gardens and Dave was living on Old Brompton Road, I think it was. Syd lived in Earl's Court. By now, of course, Syd had left Pink Floyd. Dave was firmly ensconced in Pink Floyd. Humble Pie had their first hit record. And that was the kind of social circle, if you like. How you could tell as if you were a buddy of Syd's or not was how often he would show up at your doorstep, because he had strange habits. And if he liked you, his habit would be to show up fairly regularly, excepting at weird hours, like dressed to kill, ready to go to the speakeasy, only at 8 o'clock in the morning. And he did that quite regularly. Oh, hello, Syd. Ready to go to the speakeasy? It's 8 o'clock in the morning, Syd. Oh, come on in.
How did you get invited in to these recording sessions, Jerry? How did that work out?
At the point at which I became the drummer for the majority of the sessions on the second record, Barrett, I got it, I think, primarily by default because everybody else was running for cover. Everybody else had lost their mind. No, can't do that, because Syd was hard work by that point. Just getting anything out of him, getting 3.5 to 5 minutes worth of music relatively mistake-free was like pulling teeth. So after the first record had been made, the first shift, if you like, the drummers, the bass players, the producer had all run for cover because the first record was produced by Roger Waters and David. Roger, after the first record, threw his hands up, said, "No, not doing that again," so far as I remember. And Rick Wright stepped in and said, "All right, well, I'll co-produce the next one." Bless his heart, it was David that was the constant through it. So anyway, I got there by default because all the other drummers had lost their mind trying to keep up with Syd's.
So there must have been something about Syd that you felt attracted to, that you felt you could go in there.
Yeah, by that point we had started to get along fairly well. My way of dealing with him on a personal level, I think, washed over to musically, and that was, if I stand my ground and behave as normal and as northeast end London as I can, then maybe he'll come to me. Maybe he'll be somewhat normal. And it kind of worked. And so that went across to the musical side, and I would just grin and bear it, and try and, as best possible, go with the flow, which you had to do a lot of with Syd. So I got there by default. No one else wanted the job. Dave was very dear and sweet about it. He figured on the second record what he wanted to try and do, unlike the first record, was have a unified rhythm section that played the entire record, much like any band would do. That meant me on drums, David on bass, Rick Wright on keyboards, and Syd on guitars, all guitars, and that's something that Dave was very adamant about, bless his heart, that Syd would play all of the guitars. And we had two ways of doing it. One would be, as best as possible, learn the song from either a demo or from Syd playing it through in the studio, and then work it up between the three of us as a rhythm section, and then pray that you could get it within the first take or two, because there was never more than 1 or 2 takes out of Syd that were similar, let alone the same. So that was one way, as normal as possible, proper rhythm section playing together. If that wasn't doable, because Syd was so off the wall, Dave would go the other route, which would be to have record Syd playing and singing from start to finish, and then have everything else overdubbed. And I can't now tell you, percentage-wise, maybe 40% of the record was done like that, and 60 was done as a rhythm section. And how that would work is Dave would record Syd, or he would bring a demo in that had been previously done at home or whatever. He would work out, he would get to know it real well, tempo-wise, and all the changes and the accents. And then he would stand in front of me and literally conduct me through the whole thing. Because I don't read music, and David does, but that wasn't the level we were communicating. We were ears players, we were self-taught musicians. So he would conduct me through what he had already laid down, tempo shifts. Syd's speeding up here now, he's slowing down, and he's shifting over here, and literally I would just follow Dave's body language, and that tended to work as best possible. And what's great, I think, about it is the charm of that record is the lack of polish, the lack of you couldn't, if you made that record and made it all slick and correct, it would just not work.
Yeah, it's because it's got that roughness. It sort of feels very authentic. You feel quite close to Syd.
Well, it is. It did portray his personality at that time. We could have taken the songs and said, "Okay, Syd, sit over there for a while. Go in as super slick musicians, lay it down all tight and right, and then have Syd come in and put a vocal on top of it," but it would have lost all of its character. I guarantee it wouldn't have had the longevity that it's proven to have. It just captured where Syd was at that time.
When you were involved in it, did you feel that you were getting something pretty unique in a way?
Unique in the sense that it was really weird. Where is he going now? But yeah, I guess you did. I mean, everything by that point, everything Syd did musically was off the wall. Even the songs, which there are a few on Barrett that had been written years before, when he was a 15-year-old kid in Cambridge. Effervescing Elephant, as an example, which is a lovely little song. It still had. Shit, sorry, I've lost my train of thought.
It's okay. You're saying it's like off. Everything was off the wall, and that's even that one.
Even the ones that were totally organised and written very carefully years before the nuttiness. Once they came to record them, there was still a goofiness that got in there somehow.
It's quite childlike.
Yeah, very much so. I mean, that song, it literally was written, I think, when he was about 15, and to add a lovely touch to it, once David recorded it with Syd singing and playing guitar. I think there was a bass guitar put on it. I can't recall if there was a keyboard on there, but Dave went and got a tuba player, I think. About as nutty as you can get. So I love that song. It's such a cute little song.
What's your, apart from that one, what are your favourite songs on that track?
From a musician point of view, Gigolo Aunt I was quite happy with, because we actually got from start to finish with an almost perfect backing track, and Syd even played his parts so correctly that I can remember at the end of the take we were flabbergasted. Again, it was like, wait a minute, you're not that nuts after all, you just got through that almost perfectly. Is he taking the piss again? Because that one we got through, Baby Lemonade was not recorded. That's another one of my favourites, but that was recorded the other way. That was with David conducting me through it. My personal favourite track I had nothing to do with. I didn't play on it or anything. And that's a song called Dominoes, which is a beautiful song, and it was recorded in just had a wonderful atmosphere to it. And that's the one where David insisting that Syd had to play all the guitars, that he would not come in and, you know, take over Syd's patch. Which actually I think Syd would have been quite happy if Dave would have played guitar, but Dave almost made him do it. Well, anyway, they needed a lead guitar part on Dominoes, and Syd could not get it right. They tried every which way to get him to play simple lead guitar solo bits through the song. So in complete frustration, David decided to play the song to Syd, play it back to him backwards. And Syd got it right the first time. From start to finish, perfect, only backwards. So that then when you put the tape on the right way round, you know, the guitar part's backwards and sounds magnificent. But again, it was like, wait a minute, Syd, you can't get it right going the right way, but you get it perfect going arse backwards. Alrighty then. Way to go, Syd.
It turned out to be one of the best tracks.
I personally think it is the best track. You know, a lovely song. It's, I mean, it stands up today, I think. You know, if one of these new bands, or, you know, was it Britpop bands came out with that tune, it would be a huge hit. I think. I don't know, would it? I think I might be right there.
No, I think you're absolutely right. Yeah, it's brilliant.
Because they do cite him as being a huge influence, don't they? All the...
Yeah, we had Graham Coxon playing and singing Baby Lemonade.
Oh, is that right?
Does it beautifully, yeah.
And this is who now?
Graham Coxon from Blur.
Oh, from Blur? Yeah.
Yeah, so...
Appropriately named band to cover a Syd song, I suppose. Yes. So, but he did Baby Lemonade? And he's known for that song or that cover, is he?
No, it's the first time.
Oh, he just did it for...
He did it for us.
Oh.
Yeah.
As they say in Cleveland, Ohio, way cool. Oh, dear. Did you do a good version?
Oh, it's lovely. It's really lovely. But it makes you... It sort of reintroduces you to the song, you know, because it's so fresh with somebody who's very young and very, very good new musicians, really. I mean, not that new, because Blur have been around for a while,
but relative. And I guess that does really bring into focus how way ahead of his time Syd was because of it. Because those, I mean, lyrically, other than Dylan and Lennon, there was not a whole lot of people writing from the abstract, using words for words' sake. Now, how do they sound? Never mind what they mean, you just take this word sounds great next to this one, playing with words. You know, that, other than like Syd and those two guys, all the other songs at the time were, you know, I Love You, Ooh Ooh Baby, I suppose a bit of what sits out of the question, you know, and all of that kind of
I mean, because
song.
you talked about
I just realised what I said, whoops, sorry.
That's okay. You
Sorry,
talked about
lady.
Syd being off the wall, but it isn't, and in a way, you know, you've also talked about him being ahead of his time. So I'm just wondering if the two aren't connected, because you've got this guy who's actually a bit of a genius, and he's kind of, you know, where are these songs coming from? Some of this stuff is pretty inspired and completely original, isn't it?
Well, absolutely, and it's funny you should say that, because I was thinking about the use of that word, which in rock and roll gets, you know, used a bit too much, but in Syd's case, I mean, within art, you know, a genius within the arts, as opposed to the guy who split the atom type genius. He really is one of the few that you could use that word without it being pretentious or too out of order. I mean, he really was quite brilliant at a wordsmith, melody, just going way off the wall with melodic, atmosphere. Everything about what he was doing was still ahead of its time now, almost. And what's really strange about it was when you consider the size of his legend. Well, we all know legend grows as it goes, but it was such a small amount of work, relatively speaking. It was 2 solo albums, 1 Pink Floyd record, and was there maybe 1 track on Saucer Full of Secrets he had something to do with, but that was it, wasn't it? It was, that's a very small body of work, and yet I get asked more about Syd Barrett and everything to do with it, based on just that piece, that small amount of work, than anything else I've done, which includes all the Humble Pie work, working with B.B. King, working with John Entwistle, and blah blah. But the constant over the last 30 years. Tell us about Syd Barrett. What was it like to, all out of that little bit of work? It's pretty remarkable, really. And
because this is the fascinating thing, isn't it? It's the puzzle in a way. I mean, you've described him as being pretty untogether, and yet you've got this guy in the studio coming up with really distinctive songs that stand the test of time, that other people can now sing, and they'll probably be singing them in 30 years' time as well.
It is astonishing, really, and how naturally it came to him. Because I can't again speak for the early days, but comparing him to other songwriters that I've worked with and how they work, literally pen, paper, record, their whole process of work. I mean, it seemed to me that these songs, a lot of them just came right off, almost off the top of his head. And when you look at lyrics, the lyrics involved, it's just, where did all of that come from, and how easy it seemed to come out of him,
It's sheer creative inspiration.
It is. He was supremely inspired guy, and just so far ahead of his time, really.
And do you think, a lot of people say, oh God, it's an absolute tragedy he didn't do more, but in a way you could say, well, there is that body of work there, and maybe he just said all he had to say.
Very good point. I think that's true of a lot of people. Some of them stay in the kitchen too long and end up burning everything, quite frankly. Syd certainly didn't do that. He certainly left with his entree intact, shall we say.
Can you tell us about that performance?
With the Olympia performance?
Yeah, tell us the story about that.
Well, first of all, it was at Olympia, and I thought it was at Earl's Court for the last 30 years. So maybe Syd's not the only one who's been a little bit affected. Somewhere soon after the release of the Barrett, the second solo album, it was put to us that Syd would like to... Well, no, that's the wrong way of putting it. The powers that be wanted Syd to do a live show, obviously to promote the record, and there was this kind of 14-hour Technicolor Dream type of gig, an all-day, all-night gig being put on at Olympia. I cannot for the life of me remember any of the other bands, but it was all the top weird bands of the time.
It was so I tell you what it's called. It was called the Fashion Extravaganza.
It was called the what?
Fashion Extravaganza.
The Fashion Extravaganza?
Yeah.
Oh, God. What, we were supposed to be fashionable at the time?
Yeah.
Oh.
So there were loads of bands there.
Just think, this is what happens to... Once I was fashionable. There was lots of bands and they were all fashionable. And we were supposed to be extravagant with it. Is that really what it was called? Oh my God. I can't. Is that worse than 14-hour Technicolor Dream?
Yes.
It is, isn't it? Yeah. So anyway, there we were, ever so fashionable. Me, David, and Syd. The management wanted him to play a gig, and that was like, oh, you're kidding, right? And the only person who was brave enough to take it on was David. And I figured, well, if David's brave enough, and he was kind enough to ask me, because he knew no one else would do it probably, I said yes to being a drummer. I can't remember if we rehearsed at all. Probably we didn't. Or if we did rehearse, it would have been with an acoustic guitar at David's apartment or my apartment or whatever. Come showtime, we were supposed to get up there and do, I don't know, not very long, half hour, 40 minutes, not even. I think we got as far as the second number, maybe the third, or it might have been the third verse. I seem to remember the number 3 had something to do with it, but Syd just stopped playing. That was it. And there's probably people have got, tapes of that somewhere and think it's magnificent. I don't know. Wasn't the brightest idea in the world trying to get Syd to do a live gig at the time. I do remember thinking this has got disaster written all over it. But there's a BBC sessions tape that I was on, and I don't remember it at all. So again, Syd wasn't the only nutter around.
You don't remember it?
I do not remember, but I have no recollection of being involved in this tape whatsoever until I got a call from David telling me they were about to release it, and that we were, there was some paperwork had to be signed for royalties and this and that, and so they sent me a copy of it, and you can hear a little bit of percussion in the background, like bongo drums or a tambourine or something, and I guess that was me. But
we won't ask you about what that session was like then.
No, there's no idea.
Wiped.
John Peel. It was peeled. Oh, I think it was a John Peel. So wasn't that who used to do those?
Yeah, it was Peel sessions.
Yeah. No recollection whatsoever. None.